Hey, what's up? It's Mike D back again in our video series talking about building my own custom guitar with Kiesel guitars. And the topic that I wanted to talk about in today's video is the fretboard radius and what that is and how it affects the playability of the guitar. So the fretboard radius is actually the curvature of the fretboard. So in other words, is the fretboard really flat, or does it have more of a curve to it? And there's definitely, some basic measurements for the radius of the fretboard. And what I'm going to do in this video is talk about how I like to do my research when it comes to really kind of fine-tuning these types of factors that go into the playability of the guitar. So the radius is one of those things, it's a component of the guitar that really has everything to do with the playability and the feel of the instrument. And it is actually a very important, measurement to understand, because sometimes, you might have a guitar that you just play and you just love it and it just feels good. Usually the fretboard radius is one of those reasons why it feels good to you, because it's one of those things that has to do with the playability of the guitar. And generally what you end up with, with more curved radius, is that it's certainly very comfortable. It's not as easy to play very technical stuff, and maybe not easy as to play fast, shreddy stuff. And then as you get more flat, things become more technical, and you could be more precise, but it takes sometimes takes away that feel that makes it a little more comfortable. And you have everything in between. The basic measurements, on the low end or a very curved radius would be around 7.5 inches. That is like what this Fender Strat has. This is an older version Japanese Strat. Very round, curved radius. And then the Strat behind me on the wall, that has, I think, a 9-inch radius. This Ibanez, I believe, comes in at around 15 or so, 15 inches. So this has a much more flat radius. So, and then you have something like a classical guitar that is just like dead flat. And then you have everything in between. Some Les Pauls, PRS, those are more, more round towards the 10 to 12 inches and so forth. So what I'm considering in my build, Kiesel comes standard with a 14-inch radius, and I've never really played a 14-inch radius guitar. So what I'm going to do now is switch to a session I did hanging out at the House of Guitars, where I tried out a whole bunch of different guitars, and I'm going to show you the process that I like to do when I'm considering getting a new guitar and, finding guitars that are similar or have attributes that I want to test out. So we're going to go hang out at the House of Guitars for a few minutes. I'll talk about the guitars I tried there, and then I'll come real back and give you a summary of what I found. All right, so we're hanging out at the House of Guitars. I taught guitar lessons here for over 10 years, and it's an awesome place to try new gear and really get your hands on a lot of new things or old things, depending on what you're looking for. So whenever I'm looking to buy a new guitar, or in this case, build a custom guitar with Kiesel, you really want to know everything that goes into it. And especially as you get better and look for a higher end guitar or professional guitar, all the little parts of the guitar and measurements make a big difference. And the only way to really tell what you really like is to try things out. So today what we're doing is going to be hanging out and trying a bunch of different guitars that are focused on different fretboard radius. All right, so here we are set up in one of the back rooms at the House of Guitars. And I'm set up with a whole bunch of different guitars to test out, like we said, the neck radius or the fretboard radius. And what I wanted to go over is how I like to set things up when I am trying to figure out a very specific thing that I want in a guitar. So when I picked out an acoustic guitar, it was a similar setup where I had all the guitars I was looking at, so you could just grab them and very quickly A/B everything and really get a feel for what's different about each one. So what I have set up today are guitars in a very specific order that all have a different fretboard radius. So what we have are, from this side, the flattest radius, which is going to be 16 inch. So we have a Jackson guitar here, a real shredding guitar. This is a 16-inch radius fretboard, so very flat. And then we also have the Music Man, the John Petrucci by Sterling, the Sterling model. This is also at 16-inch radius. And then we have a Schecter, which is at a 14-inch radius. So this is one of the radius that I'm considering. I don't currently own a 14-inch radius, and it's kind of right between what I use on my Ibanez and then on some of my other guitars as well, but nothing I have is a 14. So this one I'm really going to try a lot on and see how I like it. Then we have two guitars here that I've never also had anything that had what these two guitars have, and that is what they call a compound radius. So that is where at the headstock or the first fret that it's a 12-inch radius, and that so it's got more curvature there. And then as you go up and towards the body of the guitar, you get into a 16-inch radius. So it goes from 12 to 16. So that way at, the first few frets, you get a little bit more comfortable roundish feel. And then as you get towards, where you're playing more leads, you're getting more flat, which is usually generally a little bit easier to play faster on. So again, something I've never tried before in my own guitars or have had in my own guitars. So I want to test these out a bunch to try it out and see how they feel. Then we got a good old traditional Les Paul, which is a 12-inch radius. So again, getting more and more curved. And then when we get to the PRS guitar, this has a 10-inch radius. And so this is going to be the most round feeling, if you will. And then what I'm used to, I have, one of my favorite guitars is a Japanese Strat that actually has a 7.5 or 7.25 radius. So that one's very curved. It's not the most comfortable thing for me to play fast lead on, but again, it's super comfortable. And then I have an American Strat at 9-inch. And then I think my Ibanez RG is about a 15.5 or somewhere around there. And then some other guitars kind of vary in between. But the most I'm used to is probably the 7.5 to 9-inch on the Strats, and then the 15 on the Ibanez. So again, since this is something new that I want to figure out what it is that I really love the most in a radius, you want to just try to sit with a lot of different variations and see what you like. The other thing to keep in mind is that there's a lot of other things that are going to play into this. And even though like these two guitars might have the same fretboard radius, the neck style and the curvature of the neck and the back of it is going to make a big difference. In other words, the Jackson's very flat and thin, and that is a really kind of get down to business type of feel. The John Petrucci's got a lot more round and curvature to the neck itself, which honestly is a lot more comfortable. So even though you might feel that these two, they're still going to have a very different feel. So you do want to try to sit down with whatever you're working with, write down all the things that you like. Because that's what's going to really help bring all the things together when you're building and making your own custom guitar. So I'm going to sit with all these guitars for a bit and just jam on them and just try them out and really get a feel for what I like, what I don't like, to see if we could pin down what is that ideal radius that I want to go with my own guitar. Okay, so hopefully you found that pretty cool hanging out at the House of Guitars. Like anywhere that you have access to, if you have a music shop, you want to kind of try to find, like I said, multiple guitars that have, slightly different components or different measurements, in this case, the radius, and really just sit and try them out. And what I found from that session is I did really like the 14-inch on that Schecter. I also really liked the John Petrucci, which, again, I think was at a 15-inch radius. But again, what makes such a big difference is not just the radius of the fretboard, but, the shape of the neck itself, because again, something then like this Ibanez that has, I think, a 15 or 15.25-inch radius, but the neck is super paper thin. It's their Wizard 2 neck, and it's almost like you got to pinch it. And to me, that doesn't have the same comfortable feel. Something that I liked in that John Petrucci was that it has a much more rounded neck to it, and that felt comfortable. And ultimately, I did have access to the Kiesel, which I had shown in a previous video, and I'll be honest, the thing just felt absolutely perfect. So I'm definitely going to be going with the 14-inch radius that comes standard on the Aries model for a Kiesel. So I definitely, I'm going to be happy with that because, again, not only was it a nice compromise of flat where I could be very technical and very fast, but also it wasn't so flat that it felt like I couldn't hang on and play it all day long and just have it be like my daily player. But again, what really makes the difference to me is the overall curvature and roundness of the back of the neck as well. And sitting with that neck, you know, and playing that guitar for a while, just everything felt amazing about it. So, but it was a really cool exercise. You know, the compound radius was something that I was very interested to try out. I didn't notice a huge difference, to be perfectly honest, but you know, and so I'd rather just stick with what I did have access to trying on the Kiesel Aries that I had, that I borrowed for a bit, and trust the way that thing felt. And again, it's a big, huge benefit to be able to have that guitar and know exactly what it's going to feel like. But if you don't have access to that, you know, get as close as you can. You know, like I said, trying out all those different things and write out what you like, what you don't like, because these are all those things that really go into the playability of the guitar, and everyone's different. And it's also a good case, to be honest, of having multiple guitars. You know, you don't always necessarily need to have one guitar that does everything. It's one of the reasons why people have multiple guitars, but it's also a good thing to ask yourself, you know, if you're trying to justify another guitar, or in my opinion, you know, I like having different guitars for different things. You know, the Ibanez is such a different guitar than a Strat, and they really make me play different styles, totally different. So in that essence, you know, I like having different guitars for different things in different feels. So, but again, building my own, what I want to call my own custom model, I really want to make sure that every detail is in check. And so fretboard radius, really, really important. But hopefully that helps, you know, and shows you my process of how I like to try these types of things out. So we'll be at you soon with a new video.